the biggest awareness comes from, unfortunately, our biggest pains. And that's not our fault. We're kind of hardwired that way. When we were, running through the woods naked and afraid 10,000 years ago, we often focused on the first thing that popped into our view because new could be dangerous. But we also really focused on things that hurt us because things that hurt us, would eventually, at that time, likely kill us. So our brain is kind of hardwired at its core to really latch onto and hang on to those painful things because that's how we survive.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability and fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to this episode of Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. And today I have Chris Abdey. Chris Abdey is a procrastination coach with over 20 years of experience across various industries. He has a platform called the Procrastination Station. And you can find him on his personal website where he offers coaching services and resources to help individuals overcome procrastination. And I gotta say that I'm excited about this because I've had bouts in my life where there has been extreme procrastination, other times where I've had, motivation and drive to push through things. But I think consistently over my life, I've been late to things. And I'm curious what that looks like because I can have an intention of leaving early, arriving early, but somehow there's this last minute thing that I have to do that then takes 20 times the time that I thought it was going to take, and now I'm late. And I don't know if that's related, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. But welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me on the show, Reggie.
Yes, yes. How's your heart today?
You know, my heart is full of possibilities, full of joy, full of happiness.
I love that. That's good. And you're calling in from where are you at, Chris? In the
St.
world?
Catharines, Ontario.
Ontario. So we got Canada in the house. I love to hear where the listeners are from. So if you are from Canada, if you're from the States, if you're from across the pond, let us know where you're from. Send us a message, send us write a comment in YouTube or whatever. But first, I want to jump into a segment called What Comes to Mind. So the first thing that you can think of, and it can be a word, it can be a sentence, it can be whatever you want, but what comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
you know, that is such an interesting word, and I know that the first thing that comes to mind, and I really don't like the first thing that comes to mind,
Mm-hmm.
but it is the first thing that popped into mind, and it was weakness,
Mm-hmm.
and that is not the case. But that's just the conditioning that we've had, since forever.
Definitely. That I definitely agree with that. What do you do to center yourself when you're feeling stressed or depressed?
Well, when I am feeling stressed or depressed, I mean, the one thing that we have to understand is that, you know, both are really only reactions that we choose to have.
Mm.
Um, I know that nobody likes hearing that. I know I certainly didn't because I mean, the argument is, why would I choose to feel, constricted? Why would I choose to feel depressed? Why would I choose this? And the thing is that we actually get addicted to those. We get used to them. But it is a choice. And so what I do, because I mean it happens to me too. When I start to feel like I'm getting depressed, that just means that I'm living in a moment in the past that it's already happened, and that I either want to fix or I either want to bring back, and neither of those is possible. So when I start to feel kind of like nostalgic or melancholic or things like that, I just like to bring myself back to the moment I like to have gratitude, whether it's, for my cup of coffee I'm drinking or the fact that I'm 6 feet above the ground. I woke up another day. I get to experience this, all of it, good, bad, ugly, beautiful. Um, it's all the experience. If I
Mhm.
start to feel stressed, the immediate question that comes to my mind is, okay, what am I resisting? Or, what am I not accepting or trying to control that is not in my control? Because that's essentially what stress is we're trying to control something. We're trying to will something to not be the way that it is. And it causes our own suffering. But 98% of that comes from us.
That's good. I hear a huge sense of awareness around when those moments come up for you, either living in the past or trying to control something. Like you have the awareness that that is what's causing that feeling, and then you act on that. And so that's really good. I think what helped you with that awareness? Did you always have that? Did you meditate? What did you do?
um I hit the pinnacle of success and then I hit rock bottom. And that is, a wake up call that I think, we don't necessarily have to have it, but,
Hmm.
sometimes in our journeys, we need to have those moments in order to have the awareness because we don't know what we don't know. So, I mean, I'd love to say that I woke up one day and everything was fine. I was doing great, was successful. And then I said, let me think about that. That's, that's not usually the way it works. How was it? It was said it this morning. I was rewatching American Gods, and it's a very profound show actually for being entertainment. Um, and the quote that stuck out to me today was as they were leaving offerings to fairies or to leprechauns, as they were offerings for the harvest, right? They say, as the blessings increase, the offerings and the thanks that you give or the prayers that you give lessen.
Mm,
And that definitely was the case for me. Is that I had all this success and really wasn't aware of anything other than the materialistic comforts that came with it. Really.
what did that success look like for you? What how'd you define that?
Well, this is where it. Um, again, I made the mistake of basing my success on what society told me success looked like. I was doing it for all the right reason, the quote unquote right reasons, but I lost myself in the process. So, what did that look like to me? Getting that promotion, helping others, you know, being commended for doing amazing things, getting the pat on the back, that big ego boost when, I saved the company from, getting slapped with hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines or, whatever the case may be.
Mhm,
Um, but, so I was slamming through all my goals. I was, paying all my bills. I was, achieving all that material stuff, but it just didn't feel that way.
mhm. Yeah, I I have a similar story where, and I actually did most of my TEDx on this topic of achieving all the things that society says is success and feeling miserable inside and have my own breakdown. And it was at a period in time where if you had looked at the external or what was on social media or a resume, like you would be like, this is amazing, right? I had worked for Deloitte, one of the largest companies in the world, overseeing an account that was over $15 billion. I started a wealth management company, and I'm literally managing millions of dollars of some of the world's wealthiest people and getting featured in Forbes and all of this other stuff. And yet I felt a similar way. And so you get to a point where you realize that that is not what life is about. And I think that brings a great level of awareness. And I'm happy to hear that you've had the awareness, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that experience to get there.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I think that the biggest awareness comes from, unfortunately, because of the way we're wired, Reggie. The biggest awareness comes from unfortunately our biggest pains.
Mhm.
And that's not our fault. We're kind of hardwired that way. When we were, running through the woods naked and afraid 10,000 years ago, you know, we um, we often focused on the first thing that popped into our view because new could be dangerous.
Mhm.
But we also really focused on things that hurt us because things that hurt us, would eventually at that time likely kill us. So our brain is kind of hardwired at its core to really latch onto and hang on to those painful things because that's how we survive.
Yeah, that's where our negativity bias comes from. It's like, hey, be ready when that bush starts rattling that a tiger's going to jump out and eat you. And we apply that to so many other things in life, even when there's not a immediate threat to our lives. The emotional terrors that we feel, the pain that we feel, it is grouped in that same category in our brains a lot of times. And so it's yeah, our brains need to catch up with where we are today emotionally. And I don't think that uh we've gotten there, but that's just part of our evolution as humans. I got another question. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Hmm. That's a tough one. I appreciate the question. That is that's a tough one. What is my favorite childhood memory?
It can be one
When
of them, something that pops into mind.
Something that pops into mind, my favorite childhood memories are they always revolve around a sense of belonging or a sense of pride. I think one of my happiest childhood memories. I don't know why, but I always looked up to my older brother for some reason. I never really knew him because he's my half brother. But one of those memories was when he came out to the farm that we lived on one day, and my dad and him, very. It was almost like in a cartoon. We had this bee's nest in a barrel, right? And there's no neighbors around, so nearest neighbor was like a kilometer away. So everything is done in a safe manner just to set the stage. Um, so they felt that it would be a good idea to just dump a bunch of gasoline into the barrel and then toss a match in. Now, for anybody who's not up to date on fuel aerodynamics, what happens when you put gasoline in an enclosed space and the fumes get there and you toss an ignition source in is that it explodes. But it exploded in this really magnificent way. It didn't like go out and cause shrapnel or anything. It Because the barrel was open on the one end, it caused the thrust out, and then the barrel just went flying like literally 50 to 100 feet in the air. It was just,
Wow.
I don't know why that memory really sticks with me. It was fun to fun to watch.
There's a metaphor in there somewhere, Chris. Somewhere. In there. Oh, that's good. I'm glad that you're able to bring that up. I hope that that brings you some joy as you think about that. I'm curious. Your story, your personal story, and becoming a procrastination coach. How did you get there?
Well, again, I really got here by hitting rock bottom. Um, so I was working for all the right reasons. I was always helping people. I was always coaching people through emotional things, burnout, stress, productivity. I was in charge of creating systems, um, and I was doing all of that, and I was working all those hours, working 80 hours a week to provide for my family, and with the ultimate goal that I was going to bring them back to Canada because we were in
Mm,
Central America at the time.
okay.
And so, I did all that, um, became a high functioning alcoholic because, as I mentioned, I just get promotion after promotion, bonuses, whatever, sock it away to working towards that goal. Um, but then when I came back to Canada, I had a very, very harsh reality that didn't really hit me until there was a project I was going to work on that was again going to take 80 hours a week or more probably to start it up. And it fell through, which
Mm,
was, not good because I'd put a lot of my savings into it. Um, and it just didn't go anywhere. So as I was sitting there trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, somebody really told me. I decided that I needed something that would allow me to reconnect with my family too, to have time and flexibility, right? Because I had a daughter I didn't know, I had a wife that was estranged, and well, you know, you know where that goes a lot of the times.
Where no,
And
I pretend I don't know.
friend you don't know, well, there was infidelity there, and it's because I wasn't home. But at the same time, over the time I was working, I developed this resentment too, because so it was there's things on both sides all the time, right? And so anyway, somebody told me, well, why don't you just go get coaching certifications, just do that. And
Mm.
I was like, well, okay, why not? But the reason I focused in on procrastination, actually, this is a better story. It's a fun story. Is that I was a master procrastinator, and what happened is in the last 2 years of high school, I was in the program called the International Baccalaureate.
Mhm.
And so the last 2 years of high school are kind of molded into one and sort of transferable credits to university or college later. Anyway, what happened was I put off my art projects. We had to do 12 art projects in 2 years. Well thought out, well planned, well executed. Have the books, documentation. I didn't do any of that
Wow.
until the day before they were due,
Wow.
and it gets worse because it was a mock art exam. I'm sorry, mock art exhibition that was public. It was open to the public. We made the newspaper. We're in the Tico Times. You can still go look it up. They still have their archives. And actually, my saving grace was that the proctor who was performing the exam didn't know who I was. Neither did my art teacher, because I never went to class, but that's another story. So, just to give a little background of what this guy was looking at, I went into my garage. I had some caution tape, I had spray paint, I had styrofoam, I had canvas, I had markers, I had they weren't like color markers; they're permanent markers, Sharpies, and I even used toilet paper because I just used everything I could find in the
Whatever was
garage.
around the house.
Whatever was around, I just tossed it together. So he's looking at these things, these poorly painted bottles. Like I spray painted the bottles, I stuck them up in mock things that just pulled ideas out of my head. And so he comes in and he just starts in. He's like, wow. He's like, I really like this. I like how you used unconventional materials, but you didn't go too far off the rails. And I'm just sitting here thinking, dude, if all I had was duct tape, that's what you'd be looking at. And so he says, he goes on to explain it. I'm just standing there. Yeah, I'm just keeping my mouth shut, seeing where this is going. And so he says, this is very reminiscent of pathetic art. And hang on a second, pathetic art, pathetic art. I can maybe do something with this. And so I said, yes, you're absolutely right. Um, in our society, we are constantly striving for perfection. So does that not make perfection the new mediocrity? And
Mm.
just like that, I had earned myself the same grade as this other classmate of mine who busted his hump for 2 years, had extra art classes, support from the teacher, support from two very famous stained glass artists, um, had way more talent and potential than I did per labels at the time, right? And so I guess that really kind of led me out of high school with a little bit of a god complex. Like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, I can just throw whatever crap I want together and it'll just work out.
And it'll work. Yeah. Oh man, no, that is a great story, and I can definitely see how that would lead to living in procrastination when you show up and are able to accomplish something so amazing. That is, you think fast on your feet. That's a quick reframe around that. That's really cool. That so you, I mean, you brought up a lot of, the career that you were in, and then being a functional alcoholic. Like, that is something that I've seen with friends, and just like the ability to perform at high levels while being intoxicated a lot of times. Where did that come from? Did that slowly progress, or was that something that just one day you looked up, and how did that come about?
So This is a case of kind of the dangers of peer pressure, alcohol, and things like that. I do a lot of work with addictions, but so how that really came about, the real root of it came from my high school graduation party. I was not a very popular person. I was never really, in with the cool kids. I was never in with the sports people. I was never in with the nerds. I was kind of this middle omega, right?
Mm.
Never really had many friends or things. And my downfall was when I was at that party and I had had a few drinks. I would have been, yeah, I would have been 18 at the time, and I'd had a few drinks, and so I had a buzz on. First time I'd really had a buzz, by the way. Um, and I remember him now. I won't name names because I don't know if he'd want that, but he comes over to me, the one of the cool kids, and he's like, "Yo, Abdi, you know what? You're a lot cooler when you're drunk." And I'm like, and this little light bulb went off in my head. This nasty, nasty little light bulb went off in my head. Like,
Mm,
I'm cooler when I'm drunk.
mm,
So now I immediately, being the scientific, logical person I am, and dumbass at the same time, I went out after that barbecue. My friend, that same friend that I just bested at the art school, by the way, he said he was heading back home and we would go catch the bus together. I'm like, no, man, it's okay. You go on ahead. I'm going to hang around. And so I took that knowledge and I frequently went out to these bars and I tested that. Ooh, did I test that?
mm.
Alcohol allowed me to loosen up and it made me seem like I was cooler and everybody around me liked me. They were laughing, having a good time. So I was out, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
Mm.
open bar, which is a horrible invention.
Yeah.
And that's really where I kind of learned to drink. So fast forward, I used to do that. My first job was at a call center called Data Ascension, where I guess AI is doing the job now.
Okay.
And we would call people, and I'm dating myself. I was on the American Idol. Hey, what do you think about American Idol, or what do you think about web TV? You remember web
Hmm.
TV? Damn,
I
I'm
have no idea
old.
what that is.
And so we'd go down. There was a bar in the bottom of the mall, and we'd go down there and have liquid lunches frequently. 4 shots or 5 shots or whatever. Go back on the phone, loosen the tongue, right?
Mhm.
And then that sort of slowed down. So that really got it in there where I was solidified as having alcohol to have like a good time. Fast forward to when I'm working, after my daughter is born, when I started working these 8-hour weeks. Um, One of the times I was working was at night, and I had to do these reports. These reports are super boring, and there was nobody to talk to, like nobody. And so I just said, you know what? Fifth of vodka get me through this, right? About an
Mm.
hour. Takes you about an hour to process an ounce of alcohol, so you get about 12 ounces. Yeah, I should be able to. Yeah, I'll be good and get up the next morning.
Yeah.
And that's really where that habit really started to form, sort of the clock out to get things done.
Wow, wow. And you mentioned, some of your happiest childhood memories being surrounded by belong the sense of belonging. And to then see that and see that when you were drunk that brought that sense of belonging to you
Mm.
and people and the excitement of it all. I'm curious in your studies and what you know about procrastination. Is there a link between maybe addiction and procrastination, or is that something you've uncovered?
Oh, but there definitely can be.
Mhm.
Addiction and procrastination kind of go hand in hand, because a big part of procrastination is escapism or avoidance of some kind, right? Um, so what it comes down to is really procrastination. Again, I just want to take a moment here and say, you're not broken, you're not lazy, you don't need fixing. It's just programming in terms of how you're surviving. Because procrastination, just like anxiety, or fear in itself, is designed to be a defense mechanism.
Mm.
So at one point it did serve, and so but much like anxiety, if you have a gun held to your head or you're taking a math test, the brain kind of treats it the same way. So it's the um, for being something really smart, it can sometimes act in ways that don't seem that way. So procrastination is really just your brain helping you stay out of danger, but in this case danger is discomfort.
Yeah.
But it doesn't know how to modulate. So it doesn't know the difference between discomfort of, having to stand in line for 2 hours or discomfort of, getting a needle in your eye or whatever, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. Escapism. That is. As I'm thinking about my own procrastination, I'm thinking like, what are the feelings, right? Because it's not necessary threat to life or threat to my physical or anything like that. It's something emotional that is there. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that I have a level of social anxiety. And
Mm.
so that is a part of me showing up late to things because, especially when there's alcohol involved, people are already drunk. That's one scenario. Or if there's a meeting and I don't want to do the small talk at the beginning, I show up late. We're already in the depth of it all. And so I think it's important to be able to recognize that it is a form of escapism. That's interesting. Are there any other misconceptions or thoughts about procrastination that the general public may not know?
Oh, for sure. So one of again, just to go back really quickly over the first one is that, you're not lazy and you're not broken. Um, you know, it's not something that is wrong with you per se. It's you're actually working exactly how you're designed to work.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the other big thing about procrastination is that we tend to, because we also label it like that, we label it as lazy, or we label it as, being uninterested, or whatever it is that we're labeling, that it is also not a problem.
Mhm.
Um, and, a lot of us go through daily life with a little bit of procrastination here and there, and it's not really debilitating. The
Mhm.
issue becomes when, again, when we treat it like it's not something that's important, and then you know, if you're lucky, it doesn't become important. But I'm finding more and more now, especially the way our society's laid out, that it does impact you. Again, sliding into addictions or sliding into a depression or guilt or shame, um, and just that feeling of worthiness too, right? So
Mhm.
um, I think that's definitely the other biggest misconception, is that, oh, it's not something you should pay attention to.
Mm.
It it's really interesting that way. It's like it's not the end of the world, and it never will be. But at the same time, it can end your world.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Have you, with people that you worked with, do you have any stories or because I think some of us procrastinate and like you said, all of us procrastinate at some point, and we may have that in our minds as like, okay, it wasn't too bad, like you're saying, but like where does it in somebody's world, in somebody's, life maybe even?
Yeah, I'll give you an example where procrastination really took root, and it started off as a joke. Okay, so this is where it's coming from. It started off as a joke. He approached me, because his wife was only always on him that he didn't paint the fence. Like, he never got this fence painted. Like, he said that he'd paint the fence and other things, and there was this fight thing, right? But it really started as a joke because, and I get that, I understand that. And so as we were going through why he didn't want to paint the fence, and as we are uncovering that, we uncovered a lot of other things. So, um, his big thing was he didn't feel like it was worth it to paint the fence. Okay.
Mm.
So we dig under that. What would it mean if he did paint the fence? It would mean that, he would be happier to have friends over and that sort of thing. I'm like, okay, well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Being able to have more friends over, be more social. And then he's thinking about it. He's like, well, yeah, I guess it would be. So then, okay, so what's underneath that? Explain to me the process of what's happening. He's like, well, I go out to paint the fence one day and it's too hot. I go out to paint the fence another day and it looks like it might rain. Like, why am I going to
Mm.
paint the fence if it rains? Okay, all right. And so I said, okay, well, let's go through and visualize, because obviously the negatives are outweighing the positives. So, what's behind that? And it turns out that it was more of a, he didn't feel it was worth it to paint the fence, because he knew that it would cause more wasted time. And he had
Mm,
a real tight sense, like many of us do, a real tight sense of tying our worth and our value to our output. So if
mm.
he's not making money, if he's not doing things that are making him money because he's a small business owner, then he felt that it wasn't worth it.
Wow. Wow. I can definitely see that, especially being an entrepreneur myself and then valuing time so preciously. Things that aren't revenue producing are could be deemed a waste of time. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That is good. That is good. What oh man. There's so many things popping in my mind, but there's a the procrastination archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
They're different types of people, and they'll have different reasons for their procrastination, or be able to justify it or explain it in a way. Can you kind of describe those and what those personalities look like?
Oh yeah, I mean, and first of all, there are thousands, just
Wow.
so you know.
Wow.
But for simplicity, I've separated them out into five stations that are, you're predominantly in one or two of these, so it's easier to identify. Um, First up, you have perfectionist, right? So, right time, right place, right amount of resources, right whatever, perfect execution. Everything has to be perfect, essentially. Then you've got the warriors, and the warriors are those of us that, um, we put something off because, oh, I really want to go back to art school, but wait, what, if I do that, am I going to have the money? Or wait, if I do that, am I going to go broke? Or wait, if I do that, what's my mom or dad going to think? Because they're all doctors and lawyers in the family. It's fear of judgment,
Mm.
fear of what people think, fear of results, fear of some outcome, right? Um, and then we have the dreamers. The dreamers are my favorite though, because the dreamers are the ones that are innovators, the ones that have solutions, the ones that, fix problems, right? And it comes down to the dreamer of, sometimes they get so caught up in planning it that they either get enough dopamine off of just planning it and seeing it in their head, that by the time they get there and they get to seeing what it takes to get there, they're like, nah, I'm good just picturing it. And other times to that, they get overwhelmed, or they get, um, sort of freeze when they start to see what needs to be done, because they're like, oh, they don't know how to do it, or they don't know in what ways they can
Mm.
do it. So I definitely do like the dreamers. Then we have the crisis makers. So these are the people that, they say they work well under pressure. They're usually type A's. Um, the thing is, it's not urgent unless it's urgent. I mean, we all pretty much start out that way. Kids with math homework versus video games, or
Right.
having a beer with friends instead of painting a fence. Anything like that, right? And then after that, we have the defiers, and the defiers I think are my second favorite type, because as a defier, all it is we just want our autonomy, and
Mm.
it's as simple as just framing it as to, I don't have to do this. I get to do this. So it plays from gratitude, or I'm choosing to do this and taking back your power. It doesn't really matter which of those you do, but it is absolutely positively the easiest one to get over if there's nothing else getting in the way.
Mm. Okay. I as you spoke through those, I'm like, I probably least with the worry, but with all the other ones, I'm like, oh man, I can see that in myself for sure. And I'm curious about one in particular though, the crisis maker. So like, cause I think that has been a part of similar, like when you showed up and you got a great grade on that art project, and you say I can perform well under pressure. At least that's been my experience. And so how do you break the habits of procrastination when you have gotten good results under pressure by procrastinating?
Mm. Well, my question is not how do you do it or what do you do to do it. My question is, why do you want to do it?
Mhm.
Because there are some times, okay, there are some times where procrastination can be a tool and can be used in a way to make yourself more effective. I mean, I don't want to come up in here and say that procrastination is always a bad thing, because it's not. It only becomes a bad thing when it gets in the way of something you want to do. So my first question is always, well, okay, what about that makes you want to change, or why? What's your
Mm-hmm.
why in wanting to change?
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if you're a crisis maker and you don't want to be a crisis maker, you have to kind of get to your why first, right? So okay, like you were saying before, you said being late to those social things, not having the small talk, or getting there when everyone's drunk. That way you don't have to do small talk because no one's going to remember it anyway. Um, so it really depends on what it is, but the big way to get out of procrastination 100%, is to get back to your core values. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of procrastinator you are. Get back to your core values and figure out what you're interested in, what brings you joy, and instead of your to-do list, focus on your to-be list.
Mm.
Um, because your to-be list, you'll never forget because it's important to you. And everything that comes up on your to-be list is always going to be.
Describe that in detail, the to be list.
Well, let's say you have a list of 20 tasks. You have, pay bills, you have do a blog post, you have, create something, call your mother, all these different things on this list. And one of the things that many people have an issue with is prioritizing. I mean, hell, I do sometimes. Like, well, these two things, they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
So your to be list is, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to have? Then what do you have to do, or what needs to happen in order for you to be that person or to have that life, right? So, of those 20 things I just said, and knowing yourself is definitely important, because you need to know what your values are.
Mm-hmm.
But out of that, you say, I want to be a responsible citizen. Could be a valid to be list for the day. I want to be responsible. That's my goal for the day. Okay. So, what on that list is going to make me responsible? Well, paying the bills, because that's my social responsibility. So, boom, I got to get that done. Then, down on the list, you have, call your mother. That, and again, this might seem controversial. That might take a little bit of a back seat. So you might, put that there. But if your goal is being responsible today, that call to your mother might get pushed to the afternoon rather than the bills and the blog post, or other contractual obligations you may have for the day. Then if you flip that around and you said, hey, no, I want to be more loving today. Well, then the bills will get pushed to the bottom, and calling your mom will go to the top, and then writing that blog post, reaching out to that friend, is going to go to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And there's never any right or wrong way to do this. That's another thing. That's another big misconception, is there's no one way to do this. And I love this in terms of goal setting, because there are many times we look at goals and we don't want to even try, because we think we have a limitation, either no resources or no ability, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I illustrate this with a little bit of a metaphor, a parable, tiny story. So say you've got this big mountain. It's standard mountain. It's got forests, and it's really rocky, and it's got babbling brooks and streams, and it's very beautiful. And you have like a salmon, you have a monkey, and you have a mountain goat that are all looking at that mountain, and they all want to climb that mountain. They're like, hey, it looks cool. I want to be up there. I want to do that. And so the mountain goat goes first, right? So it starts climbing up, and it has a really easy time climbing up. I mean, it's a mountain goat. Its feet are built for that. It's jumping on the rocks, jumping up and down. It gets up there, gets to the top, bleats out its victory call, and it's done. And the salmon and the monkey are still down on the mountain watching all this happen. The monkey says, well, he's like, I got feet. I can do this. He starts walking up the mountain. But, because the mountain goat is designed for walking on those sharp rocks, and the monkey starts hurting his feet. He's like, and he starts going up, and it gets slower and harder. He's like, screw this. Starts looking around. He sees a tree. He learns that he can swing from tree to tree to get up. So he uses his arms, and he starts swinging tree to tree top, up and up. And, he gets to the top of the mountain. not walking, but by using the trees. And and he bleats, he roars out. He's like, "Yeah, I did. I'm the best." And or whatever sounds they make, right? And the salmon is down there sitting there, and he's now seen two times people have been successful getting up there. But the salmon, instead of looking around and trying to figure out how he can do it, he says, "Damn, I don't got no legs. I don't got no arms. I can't do that." He just doesn't do it.
Mm.
But if he'd taken the time to look at the mountain, he would have noticed, yeah, rocks and the trees of the monkeys, but also a stream, which he could have used to get to the top.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's powerful. That's powerful. What do you want people to take away from that story?
I want people to take away that where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm.
Anything that you want to do or anything that you need to do in life, you are perfectly equipped to handle. You just might not see the ways in which that could happen for you.
Mm.
One of the good examples I have is people that procrastinate on travel. Right? They say, "I don't have enough money. I don't want to do this." They watch YouTube. They watch the travel vloggers. They watch people that stay in these $500 a night hotels or $1,000 a night hotels, or how much money they spend, and they're like, "I can never do that. Look how much money they're spending." Well, okay, you can still go to Europe. I mean, you can still have the experience, but I mean, what is it about going to Europe that you really want? Is it to
Yeah.
see Europe, or is it to see the inside of those gold toilets? Like, I mean, what is it that you want to see?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not staying $500 night hotels, but you can go and you can stay in a hostel. You can backpack. You can couch surf. You can get volunteer opportunities. There's so many ways to do that.
True, true. You can do anything you set your mind to. That's amazing. Are there any other tips as it relates to avoiding or beating procrastination? So we got the to be list, which I think is amazing. Any other things that we can do, something like that?
Oh, for sure. The most powerful thing you can do, and this goes back to knowing yourself. Um, and I'll give you an example to illustrate my point. But it's never the entire thing that you are avoiding or that's the drainer for you. It's always one specific part. And
Mm,
if you can identify that part and you can either negotiate around it or you can fix it, then you won't have the procrastination
mm,
anymore. And I illustrate this with my own example. Like I'm not a gym guy, but I do go out to my garage. I have a set of weights and an exercise bike. And I don't have any problem getting up at 5:30 and going out doing something. It's not 2 hours a day or anything, but And then summer rolls around. My daughter's out of school, and I used her as an excuse and the good weather to not do it. I just said,
mm.
it's warm. It's Canada. It's not going to be warm forever. Go out, enjoy it, spend time with my daughter. I'll get back to it when she's in school. And so we spend the summer out there, and school comes, and I get back into the routine, no problem. But about the end of October, second week in November, I guess, I noticed myself starting to drag my feet. There would be days where I'd really push myself to do it, and there'd be days where I just said, "Nah, it's not happening." And so I sat down. I said, "Well, wait, why is this happening? What's going on? Let's break it down." Getting up at 5:30, not a problem. Doing the exercise, well, I've been doing it. I was doing it. That's not a problem either. Like nothing. Ah, but then I get to the part where it's like, "Oh, I have to go to the garage." Okay,
Mm,
I have to go to the garage. Well, it's colder outside, therefore the garage is colder. I don't like being cold.
yeah.
And so, I once I realized that, I'm like, "Oh, well, okay." So what I did was I just adjusted my schedule a little bit to when I got up to immediately turning on that space heater, then getting a coffee, and then lo and behold, the procrastination went away.
Wow.
And what's really powerful about this method of figuring out one thing of why you're avoiding something is it spills out into the rest of your life. Because if you're procrastinating one thing to that extent, it usually means that there are other areas of your life you're doing the same thing. You just might not know it.
Mm,
So I always put off when my daughter would ask me to go out and play in the snow, build a snowman, go to outdoor activities in the winter, go for walks. I'd always find something better to do or to put it off. And once I realized that one thing was like, oh, cold. I don't like being cold. Okay. So I set myself up for success. I have the right gloves. I have the right winter clothes. I prepare myself to not be cold. And the procrastination goes away in those areas too.
Wow, I love that. Identify the one thing. That is good, and I think like we're similar in the I don't like the cold. I don't like the discomfort that it brings my bones, and so, but I've challenged myself, and I think it's helped in other areas where I would do ice baths on a regular basis. So it's sitting to my neck or sometimes chest in just unbearably cold water. And it is hard at the beginning. It is like I want to run, I want to get away, I want to run. And then at some point, it starts to ease and it starts to numb. And then I'm telling myself the entire time, it's just water. It's just water. It's just cold water, and you get out and then your body gets flooded with all these good chemicals and you feel good afterwards. But in the moments where I want to stay in bed a little longer, or I don't want to work on that project right then and there, or whatever it may be, it's like, well, it's just standing up and going to the bathroom. It comes back to it was just the water. And I think that's been a helpful tool for me, just a little hack of like, if I can sit in this cold ass water and this is like one of the most unbearable things for me, then I can do all those other things that feel a little bit uncomfortable. And so I love that example, but I think it'll help me for sure, just knowing that about myself. That's what you said earlier. We have to know ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I got a couple of more questions for you. Can you share a memorable success story with a client that you've worked with, helping them achieve their goals around their procrastination, what their life looked like and what it looks like now?
Oh, no, yeah, for sure. I think the biggest one, um, my biggest success, I'm sure other people wouldn't agree, but my biggest one that I think is where I helped somebody. They were really putting off accepting a excuse me, accepting a job with a friend, because they felt like they really weren't worthy of the job, or they had too much responsibility, or they didn't want to let their friend down. But when it came down to it, is they were putting way too much weight on what they did, and they were
Mm,
taking on what wasn't theirs. And this causes overwhelm, because when we take things on that really aren't ours to deal with, we don't know what ways we can deal with that, because it's not ours to deal with. um, I can point to this in my own life in several areas. But so what her fear was that because she was going to go in as an HR sort of behavioral analysis analyst, and do recommendations and workplace evaluations, right? So her thing was, she felt like it was too much power if somebody went in one day and they were having a bad day. Maybe they were, maybe they went out the night before. Maybe they had a fight with their wife. Maybe their dog bit them. Maybe their cat got hit by a car. Whatever reason, they're having a bad day. And if she said that they had that bad day and they happened to go in for the evaluation for that day, her worry was that the company would take those recommendations and they would fire them, right?
mm,
Um, and they would have that thing. So it looked like she was really, she was really kind of reluctant and afraid to step out of her comfort zone into that job, even though it'd be better for her and such. But she felt like it would be too much on her, and so we worked through that and told her, do you own the company? No. I mean, are you actively hiring or firing? No. Did they say that this would be your responsibility? No. Okay, so then what makes you take that on? And now her life looks like, she did the internship there, and she went on, and now she's one of the top people in her department there. And that to me is the bigger success, because you know she not only bettered herself, she proved to herself that she was capable, but she also proved to herself that she could also let go. And I think that is like a double score for me, because understanding that we don't have to take anything on,
mm.
that's a win. But understanding that letting go is just as important, is way, way harder.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I love that story. It's a great story. And yeah, kudos to you and for her for being able to find that realization because the boundary setting is hard, the surrendering is hard, especially when you want to be in control. I think that is a huge win. So kudos. Um, I, I got a couple of rapid response, fill in the blank questions, to close us out here. So the first one is procrastination has taught me blank.
Procrastination has taught me compassion. I'd say
Mm,
compassion.
I love that. My greatest source of motivation is blank.
My greatest source of motivation is um, understanding.
Ooh, I love it. If I could offer one piece of advice to chronic procrastinators, it would be,
Well, it's compound because there's not really one. It is, again, you're just going back to the most important things. Know yourself, but also have compassion for yourself.
hmm, yes, yes. And then a book or resource or person who's profoundly impacted me is this.
Oh, I gotta say that the author that really set me on my way would probably be Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now.
Yeah, that's a really great one. That's really great. Oh, thank you, Chris. That was so good. And you gave so many great tips for people who may be procrastinating. But I think one of the most important things I heard was that you're not broken, that there's nothing wrong with you, that your body's actually responding in the way that it's supposed to the ways that it's feeling, and to give yourself that compassion. So thank you. And I hope that you extend that to yourself. And I know you're doing it for your clients as well. Are there any last thoughts or final words that you want to leave the listeners, perhaps maybe those struggling with procrastination?
I think the only thing that I'd like to leave everybody with is that, you know, even if you can't find motivation or inspiration for yourself today, um, it can really work wonders, even if you just try to be that, motivation or inspiration for someone else.
Mm, that's good. That's good. Chris, thank you so much. How can people contact you if they want to get in touch?
The easiest way is definitely LinkedIn. I'm the only Chris Abdey on LinkedIn. All the rest of my contact information is on there anyway, so definitely the easiest way.
Awesome. You heard it. Well, Chris, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being vulnerable. And I hope that you continue to help so many people on your journey. It's been liberating to hear you as you. I mean, we've had some similar experiences, and to be able to be on the other side of helping other people heal from those things is amazing. So thank you. With all the things that you could be doing and all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability.
Oh, I thank you very much for having me, Reggie.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.